Hi Year 10, Mr. Tapley here to walk you through the Year 10 Health, Wealth, Disease, Disaster Area Study 1 Dev Task. So we're looking at human well-being in Victoria. Specifically, we are looking at comparing human well-being in Glen, Waverley to a disadvantaged suburb in the Greater Melbourne region. So in this video, I'll be explaining the instructions, the requirements for the assessment. I'll be going over the rubric. I'm really just trying to break it down step by step for you guys so you have as much detail, as much support as possible to complete this assessment during remote learning, which again, we realize is a challenge. So if you have any questions or concerns, I need more time, the technology is not working, you can't find the right data, please let us know and we'll see what we can do about helping you guys before the due date. So there's a lot of information in this file. So this is the instruction sheet, essentially. You also have a rubric, which I'll be going over at the end of the video. And both of these files can be found in Compass or in Google Classroom. So you've got no excuse for getting lost. The reason that there is a bit of information in this file, you can see I've got the instructions, part 1, part 2, and then space for you to write out your response. The reason we've got a lot of detail is because we want to make it as simple as possible for you guys. We want to give you as much help so that the actual assignment that you're writing doesn't cause you too many problems. So I apologize if it looks a bit scary, but really, breaking it down as simple as possible, this is all you're doing. You're creating a map and a PQE, and then you're creating a graph and then a summary paragraph of that graph. So it's basically looking at human well-being, so testing your knowledge of human well-being, and it's testing your geospatial skills. So can you write out a PQE paragraph? Do you know what the elements of bolts and salts are for maps and graphs? So really all you need to get done at the end of the day, map, paragraph, graph, paragraph. So hopefully all the detail within each section here. So part 1, looking at your map, part 2, looking at your graph. All that detail, all those instructions should help you get through this as smooth as possible. So part 1, creating a well-being map of Melbourne. Now in the past, we had you guys actually handwrite your maps, a bit challenging during remote learning. So we found a useful little website that essentially creates the map for you. And all you guys will have to do is add a bit of bolts and then interpret the data. So create a PQE summary paragraph. So what you're going to use is this website here, which takes you to the ABS website, so the Australian Bureau of Statistics, people in charge of keeping track of all the numbers, all the relevant numbers about human well-being in Australia. And what that map is measuring is something called SIFR, so Socio-Economic Index for Area. Fancy way of saying, look, we're looking at socio, so people, economic, and money. So looking at health and wealth in these different areas, these different regions. So if I click on that link, it'll take me to this website. And I'm looking at a map of Australia. What I actually want, and this is in the instructions, is a map of Greater Melbourne. And that still looks a bit funny to me. So again, this is in the instructions if I go back. But the next step, once I've typed in Greater Melbourne, is to change the map layer and change the opacity. Opacity? I'm not an English teacher. Anyway, so what I want to do is change this to 2016 state suburb, so the SSC, because that's what we're looking at, the suburbs. So if I click on that, still a bit difficult to read. So what I'm going to play with now is this bar here, so layer opacity, and that's going to change how dark these colors are, how see-through they are, basically. So if I take it all the way down, I can see what the places are, but I can't see what these different colors and numbers are. So if I go, let's say, halfway, that's good. So now I can see the names of those different suburbs and regions, and I can see what these different colors measure up to. And what those colors measure up to is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those colors are measuring out the quintile number. Again, fancy way of saying, basically, this is where you are ranked in terms of your human well-being. So quintile 1 is the lowest human well-being in our scale. So if I have a dark red region, for example, up here by Milton, that means I have very low well-being. So quintile, so 5, so top 20%, 40, 60, 80, and then the bottom, basically the lowest well-being range. So 20%, 20, 20, 20, 20. So the lowest well-being in these dark red colors. And then as I go up that color scale, I get slightly more progressive in terms of my human well-being. And then dark blue is where the higher human well-being areas are in this map. So once I've got this nice pretty little map, the next step is to take a screenshot of that map and copy the image into your dev file. So what I might do is go here and I just go print screen or copy paste, whatever device you're using. and then I'm going to paste it into this space at the bottom here. You can create your own file, but we recommend you use this file because it's got the instructions and everything in one easy to find place. So all I have to do is copy in that image. However, those of you who remember your bolts will notice that our map is not complete. So you're going to actually have to add bolts to your map. So all the missing elements of bolts, which for a reminder is border, orientation, legend, title, scale, and source. You're going to need to add those to your map before you can create your PQE paragraph. So once I've got my picture of my map, once I've put that in with bolts, I'm then going to use the PQE format to create a little summary paragraph describing human well-being in Greater Melbourne. For those of you that need a reminder on what PQE looks like, you're looking at the pattern, quantifying the data, so looking at quantities, numbers, examples, and then using a bit of exceptions to my patterns. So the first thing I would say is, well, what is this map? So the map illustrates where. So I'm going to look at the title of my map. What am I measuring? What's the data? Where is it? When is it? Next, I write my pattern. So what is the pattern? So where is the data going up, down, left, right? So what is the general pattern to my map data? So I'd look at this map and I'd think about what is it measuring? Where are the high and low values? And can I find a pattern? Maybe that pattern relates to geographic region, so where it is. Maybe it relates to population. Maybe it relates to income in these specific regions. So think about the pattern for your P. Q, so quantify. I want some numbers. So find a high and a low value that supports your pattern. So if you're saying the pattern does this, prove it. Prove it with some numbers. Prove it with some data. So I'd be as specific as possible. So I'd use the name of the place and the numbers for that place to give out my pattern. And then E for exception. So again, I'd look back at my map, find something that doesn't fit the pattern. So if I'm saying that over here everything is this, but then there's one place there that doesn't fit that pattern, that's my exception. And again, I'll be as specific as possible. I'll give the name and the number. So that's my PQE paragraph. It's only going to be, 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 sentences in length. So it's not going to be super, super crazy. We're not asking you to write an essay. It's about the detail that you're providing in those sentences though. So we want quality, not quantity. So once I finish my PQE paragraph, I'm effectively done with section 1. So I'm about halfway through. What I want to do before I move on to the next step though is search for Glen Waverley. So I want to look back on my map and I want to see if I can find Glen Waverley here. So some of you should know where that is, hopefully. Otherwise, if I go up here and I type in my beloved suburb, Glen Waverley, I can see, I'll zoom out a bit, that I'm sitting in that darker blue region. So I need to make a note of what quintile that is, so what ranking that is in terms of high or low human well-being. Glen Waverley's up there at the top, but I want to find a suburb that is disadvantaged. So I want to find something to compare to Glen Waverley that is in quintile 1, so the red, so low well-being. So I'll go back to my map, zoom out a bit. That's a bit too much. And I need to find a region that has a bit of red in it. So staying in the Greater Melbourne region, I'm trying to look for that dark red color, write down the name of a suburb, and then I move on to step 2. Or section 2, I should say. So I've got my map and my PQE, I'm halfway down. Now I need a graph and then a summary paragraph for that graph. So using the disadvantaged suburb you selected in the final step of part 1, you will prepare an income graph. So a graph that shows income, how much money I'm making, comparing the disadvantaged suburb to Glen Waverley to Victoria. So the final part for this thing looks something like this. I've got 3 bars. So 1 for Glen Waverley, 1 for Victoria, 1 for a disadvantaged suburb of your choice. And then I'm going to write a little summary paragraph explaining what I can find in that graph. So interpreting that data. So I'm going back to the ABS website to find the relevant data that I need. So you can access that website by clicking on this link here. If you click on that, it'll take you here. And what I'm looking for is quick stats. So I want to be quick. So I'm clicking on quick stats. I'm going to scroll down to the search bar. And again, this is in the instructions. I'm going to enter the name of my location. So again, it has to be a disadvantaged suburb. There's no use comparing Glen Waverley to another suburb that has a high human well-being ranking. So you need to click on something that has a red color in your map of Greater Melbourne. This is not a disadvantaged suburb, but for the sake of the video, I'm going to type in my old hometown, so Mount Waverley. Now, I've got a lot of things to pick from here. similar to what we did with the map when we were looking at SSC, that's exactly what we're doing for the graph. So don't pick one of those other ones like ILOC or SED, lots of acronyms. I want the SSC data, so the state suburb. So I'll click on that, press go, go, go. And then I'm given quite a lot of information, arguably more information than I need. All I really want from this website here is, if we go back to my instructions, so 2016 state suburb data, median weekly income. So my income graph needs to measure the average amount of money that these households are making. So I need to find the figures for Victoria, Glen, Waverley, and then the disadvantaged suburb. Those are going to be my 3 bars there. So median total household income, looking at weekly, repeating that process again to find Glen, Waverley, same thing. So all you need to do is go back to ABS. Whoops, the other one. And I'm just going to scroll down. So it gives you a lot of information, but it's got people, the families, it's got household, average household prices. Again, it's got more data here. If you're tech savvy, you can just go Control F, and I could go income. Oops, or it could be actually at the very top of this, and I'm just stupid. Yep, I'm stupid. Okay. So that's the median weekly household income for my suburb. But if I go down here to the actual section where all that data is, I've got my Mount Waverley one for household, not for personal or family. I've got the Victorian average. Now I just need to find the Glen Waverley one. So just repeat it for Glen Waverley, and you'll have your 3 numbers there, your 3 data values. Now what you want to do, again, in the space provided below, or you can do this in a separate file, is create a little graph. Now you can use, I used Google Sheets, you can use Microsoft Excel. There's lots of different Microsoft Office and Google tools that you can use to create a graph. Very, very, very simple. You just need to go insert graph, and you'll be able to add a little graph such as that into your document. Once I've got that though, I need to make sure that my graph has salts, so the correct graphing conventions. For those who need a reminder, it needs to have a scale, axes, labels, title, and source. Now my summary paragraph is going to be a bit different for the graph. Instead of writing out a formal PQE, I'm using these 1, 2, 3, 4 little sentence stems to create my paragraph. So I'm going to start off by saying, well, what does my graph represent? So that's one sentence. Start off by saying, Glen Waverley versus Victoria. What's the comparison? Same, similar, different, way up, way down. Compare the disadvantaged suburb versus Victoria, same thing. And then finally a summary statement. So this is you evaluating and interpreting the data, saying, okay, so this and this equals this. Therefore, so you make a conclusion, basically. So what can you say about your suburb versus Glen Waverley versus the Victorian average? You know, what's the pattern that you're seeing there? Remember to be specific. Don't say Glen Waverley has big income. Say Glen Waverley has, and then provide the specific data there. And then you're done, guys. That's all you have to do for this assignment. So once you've smashed out that, you submit that to either Google Classroom or Compass by the due date. Again, if you have any questions or concerns about the assignment, please let us know. Remember that while you are completing this assignment, not just at the end or not just when you get your grade, you should be looking at your rubric. So you're essentially being assessed on your map. So does your map have the right information? Your PQE summary. So have you used the PQE template? Have you used it well? Your graph. Again, does the graph have the right information? Are you comparing Glen Waverley versus disadvantaged suburb versus Victoria? Have you interpreted the data? So that's your summary paragraph. Your language. So use better language than Mr. Tapley. Make sure you're not making spelling errors, grammatical errors. Make sure you're using correct terminology. So don't say that individual has big money, very, dollar sign emoji. Say median weekly total household income. So just using some fancy words. Salts. Have you got salts? Bolts. Have you got bolts? And then you're done. Again, any questions or concerns, please let us know. Hope you guys are coping well from remote learning. Hopefully we're back in school next week so we can talk about this and go over the feedback in class before the CAT, the final assessment for Area Study 1. And best of luck, guys. Cheers.